and welcome to Leadership from the Inside Out. I'm Martin Hubbard, principal of the Core Group. My whole focus in creating this series is to assist people in focusing on some things that I think are very, very important relative to personal growth and development through advancement or achievement in life. Most people don't really take the time to consider how things work for themselves and in the world around them. The whole focus of our time here is really going to be, what are those things that make a difference? What separates people? Why are some people successful in life or appear to be successful and do so with great ease, while others seem to struggle achieving certain levels of success, and then some people fail altogether to rise to any level of success? Well, I really believe that what you think, how you think, is what matters. Your thought drives everything in your life. Most people don't fully understand what that means. And today we're going to talk about that a little bit, specifically from the standpoint of how your mind works. We all have a brain, and we all know we have a brain. Uh, the doctors tell us that, science tells us that. But really, what is the function of the brain? And most people don't understand that. There are a lot of concepts about mind and thought. But for the purpose of our discussion, I really just want to focus on people's experience, what you experience. From a scientific standpoint, there are two types of thought. There's conscious thought and subconscious thought or unconscious thought. The first, being conscious thought, really revolves around cognition, executive function, decision making. When we're thinking about something that's in front of us or we're trying to solve a problem. Most of us believe that that's what drives our life or what happens in our life. But ultimately it's not. In fact, we only use about 10% of that relative to the ultimate decisions that we make in our life. 90% that we use is what's called subconscious or unconscious. And that's a little bit more tricky. What is the subconscious? I've heard it described this way. The subconscious is instinctive desire based on past reasoning will. What does that really mean? Well, it's all of your past thinking that you don't cognitively think about, but it's driving you. Ultimately, this is a huge piece in what moves us in a direction and ultimately determines where we will end up in life. The conversation that I want to have, or what I want to draw people's attention to, is the fact that it's all driven by thought at some point. And I'm not talking about the 10% conscious thought, but I'm talking about the thought that is below the surface. The way that we recognize that thought is akin to the dialogue in your head. What's the dialogue, that running dialogue that you have when you're not focused on something, but there's just conversation? You know the conversation I'm talking about. It's that chatter in your head. That's the thinking that really shapes what happens in our lives. The thought. What you think and how you think is what matters. If that chatter is very positive and optimistic, fearless, courageous, that's what's going to manifest in your life. If that dialogue is negative and critical and fatalistic, that will manifest in your life in a very general way. So the most important thing is to begin by observing that dialogue. Ultimately, where you start is through observation, beginning to see for yourself what your dialogue is. In order to do that, you have to consciously, now this is the 10%, consciously focus on your thoughts. From time to time, you would just examine your thoughts, not from a judgmental standpoint, but just observing that dialogue. Like when you walk into Starbucks and you're running late. What's the dialogue that you're having in your head? Critical, negative, anxious dialogue? Or is it a optimistic, joyful, thoughtful dialogue? You might be amazed at what you see. But ultimately, This is the thought that we're talking about that really matters. What you think, how you think, shapes everything. Remember, your subconscious is instinctive desire based on past reasoning will. That dialogue from your past, I'm talking about from your childhood. And this is a little bit in depth, and we're not going to go there today. But ultimately, in theory, just think about that. So your future subconscious will be based on your current reasoning will, the dialogue you're having today. The only way that you'll know is if you observe. The techniques that I recommend are thought observation from the standpoint of just observing the dialogue that you're having. Observation is the key, not from a judgmental standpoint, but just as an observer. Try not to place judgment on what you're observing. The second thing that I recommend is meditation. Meditation is really just a form of thought focus, focusing on your inner thoughts. Most people think it's some type of spiritual thing that they have to learn or go to a monk or go to a guru or something like that, but it's nothing of the sort. What it is simply sitting quietly and intentionally focusing on your thoughts, observing your thoughts, breathing deeply, trying to slow yourself down. I believe this is a very important practice relative to thought development. And ultimately, if you engage in these two practices, you'll see the results. And once you experience the difference, you'll want to do more. It's my hope that you'll try this over the next couple of weeks. You'll observe for yourself the benefit of doing that. That's all I have for you today. Next time we get together, we're going to talk about some more topics that relate to thought development. One concept in particular that really stands out with me is this whole idea or notion of two-directional balanced thinking. Stay tuned for next time, and we'll talk more about that. Hello, and welcome to Leadership from the Inside Out. I'm Martin Hubbard, principal of the Core Group.